How's it going, everyone? My name is Kylan Ginger, and I want to welcome you to this Acquira presentation where we're going to be talking about the best investment that you can make during a recession, and that is acquiring recession-resistant businesses and then optimizing and growing them. So I'm going to walk you through the exact process that you can go through to do this and how you can get started even today. And I would just encourage you to get comfortable, turn off your notifications, put your cell phone down, and watch this presentation through to the end because I think you'll get a lot of value from it. And having said that, let's jump right into it. So by the end of this presentation, you'll understand why being an acquisition entrepreneur is the best way to solve for money. And let me just define an acquisition entrepreneur really quick. That would be anybody that goes out and purchases an existing business. Okay, pretty self-explanatory. You'll understand the problem the economy is facing due to the retiring of baby boomer-owned small businesses. You'll understand how this problem is further exacerbated by the COVID-19 epidemic. By the way, for anybody watching this, I sincerely hope that you're safe, that you're well, and I also wish the same for your family and friends. You'll understand how the above 2 points creates a massive opportunity for the acquisition entrepreneur. You'll understand how you can buy a recession-resistant business on great terms for only 10 to 20% down, more often 10% down. And you'll understand how you can systematize that business and become an owner, not an operator, and then buy another one and do the same thing over and over again and build a private equity empire, a portfolio of companies that builds wealth and gives you more time and financial freedom. So you've heard me mention a recession-resistant business a couple times already. I want to take a second and talk about what I mean by that. And then later on in the presentation, we're going to take a much deeper dive. A recession-resistant business has a couple characteristics, okay? One is that it's a product or service that will still be needed during a recession. And two is that it's something that can't be easily DIY'd. So your average person is not just going to be able to easily look up on YouTube how to do this product or service and do it themselves. And specifically, the businesses that Acquira is targeting are home services businesses. So a good example of a home services business that fits these two characteristics would be an HVAC company. During a recession, people are going to want to stay comfortable in their homes. They're going to want to still have heating and cooling. And maintaining or installing an HVAC system is not something just anybody can do. It takes years of training to become a tech, and there's licensing involved. And so that is a good example of a recession-resistant business. Again, we'll cover this more in depth later on in the presentation. So why solve money by becoming an acquisition entrepreneur? This is something I'm pretty passionate about because, and we're going to talk about my history in a bit here, but I've built and sold 3 businesses. And after discovering acquisition entrepreneurship, I don't know if I'll ever be very motivated to build a business from scratch again. And so I want to talk about the why here. Acquisition entrepreneurship is better than starting a company from scratch. And this is because you can step right into an existing customer base and existing cash flow. You don't have to go through all that trial and error of coming up with a product or service from scratch and then finding a product market fit and then making your first sales and then building that customer base and scaling the business. If you look at the statistics of the amount of startups that fail, you'll quickly realize that the odds are stacked against you. But when you're buying an existing business, you can buy a business that has a proven track record over decades, that has proven cash flow, that has a proven customer base, that has proven products and services that you can build and expand on. It's basically like cheating the system, right? And again, you're literally skipping years of this trial and error process of building a business from the ground up. It's better than working for somebody else. Now, I'm not knocking employees, right? If you're an employee, that's great. But the reality is, more often than not, you are building somebody else's dream. And if you own your own business, you can be your own boss, you can build more significant wealth, and you can have more time and financial freedom. The issue is most people think that to own your own business, you have to start it from scratch. But again, look at our first point, buying an existing business is so much better. And there is a lot of opportunity, as you're about to find out. The return on investment is better and more recession resistant than investing in the stock market and other more traditional assets. We're going to be covering a typical acquisition deal structure and the returns that you can get later on in the presentation. But right now, especially during a recession or when a recession is looming, a lot of people are pulling their money out of the stock market. And when the stock market's even doing well, average returns are, maybe 10% or less, really good returns, or maybe between 10 and 20%. Whereas with acquiring a business, your returns can easily be 100% plus. So I'm excited to break that math down for you in a bit here. During a recession, people are also looking to put that money that might have been in more traditional assets into more recession-resistant assets. Like, that just makes sense. And again, as we talked about, there are a lot of recession-resistant businesses to acquire out there. And that brings me to this next point, which is that those businesses are a lot more affordable than you think. And we're going to talk about exactly why that is here in a second. Once you acquire the business, you can then implement systems into it and step out of the day-to-day and spend more time doing what you love. And then, like I've already mentioned, you can do that again and again and again and build a portfolio of recession-resistant businesses and eventually exit those for a healthy return. So let's talk about this looming problem that our economy is facing. And no, I'm actually not talking about COVID-19. This problem that I'm about to talk about has been around long before COVID-19 was even a thing, and it really does represent a $10 trillion, you heard me right, $10 trillion opportunity over the next 10 years. So, baby boomers, that generation, owns 2.3 million businesses in the US, which represents around 57% of America's total small business count. Their businesses employ 25 million people, and they financially impact nearly 100 million. So we're not talking small numbers at all here. So there's nothing wrong with that, all right? That's an awesome thing. The problem begins once we realize that boomers are retiring at a rate of 10,000 per day. And these are numbers you can look up, guys. There's major news outlets talking about this. Now, there's something called the ETI, which stands for the Exit Planning Institute. And this is an organization that exists just to track people who are looking to exit their businesses. And they estimate that there is, what I said, $10 trillion worth of small businesses that will need to switch hands in the next 10 years. And the real problem is this. Only 10 to 20% of businesses listed will sell due to a lack of buyers, which means the rest are left with no choice but to shut down, which again, when you look at the fact that all these businesses employ millions of people and financially impact hundreds of millions, that is what creates a major problem for our economy. This challenge with our economy is the entire reason that Acquira exists, and I'm going to be talking about what exactly we do, how we help you here in a second. What we've been starting to see, though, is that this problem is 10x'd during a recession. A recession creates even more motivated sellers and fewer buyers. We just talked about there already being a really high supply of businesses looking to sell and a very low supply of buyers. A recession just exacerbates that. And then the current situation is that COVID-19 is literally targeting the generation that owns these businesses, that already wanted to retire and exit their business. And now this comes along and further exacerbates the problem. All a lot of these sellers want to do is get a fair price for their business, retire, and spend more time with family and friends. So all of a sudden, because of this, the acquisition entrepreneur just becomes even more relevant than it was several months ago. So this begs the question, why aren't these businesses getting acquired? Why are there so many baby boomers looking to exit really healthy businesses at really affordable prices, and there's so few buyers there to take advantage of this opportunity? And the answers are fairly simple. One is that people generally lack the interest. And especially during a recession, a lot of people just aren't searching for this stuff. Chances are, as you're watching this presentation, you probably weren't aware that there were so many businesses looking to switch hands over the next decade. People just don't talk about acquisition entrepreneurship a lot. And if people are thinking of owning a business or being an entrepreneur, they think of a startup. They think of building a business from the ground up. And Silicon Valley, for instance, has done a great job of making this popular and romanticizing the idea of a startup. But there's very few people talking about acquisition entrepreneurship. And that's what I'm aiming to change with this presentation, by the way. Two is that even if people know about acquisition entrepreneurship and want to buy a business, they just lack the skills. There's a lot of unknowns. Where do you find these businesses? How do you make sure you're buying the right business? Where do you get the capital to buy the business? Which again is this third one. People don't know if you're going to buy a 7-figure business, where do you get all that capital, all that financing? And once you've bought the business, how do you step into the business and optimize and grow it? There's just a lot of unknowns. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that have the skills to do this lack the capital, and a lot of people that have the capital lack the skills, is what we're finding. But this is a massive opportunity for people that do have the interest in acquisition entrepreneurship and have the skills and the capital. And because there's such low demand for these businesses, because there's so few buyers, and there's such a high supply of businesses looking to sell, They are very affordable and can sell for less than 3 times their annual cash flow. Again, in a bit, I'm going to break down a deal for you and we're going to see those numbers. But that means if there's a business earning $1 million in profit per year, you could get that business for $2 million, for 2 times that cash flow, which is a really good price. When you run the math on your return on a deal like that, the numbers are insane. And once again, you should keep in mind that this opportunity has existed for quite a while, long before COVID-19 ever came around. But this is just amplified during a recession. You have sellers that are even more motivated to give you better prices on terms for even stronger companies. You know, I love this quote by Warren Buffett: "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy only when others are fearful." During a recession, things go on sale because people are fearful, and that is a major opportunity, especially with these assets, for the acquisition entrepreneur. And that's why I believe, guys, that the next wave of entrepreneurship will be acquisition entrepreneurship. That's not the case yet. We're still early in the process, but that's why I'm doing this, because more people need to know about it, and myself and Acquira exists to help you. Now, I promise we're going to dive deeper into all of that, but before we do, I wanted to just tell you a little bit more about myself and my background, so I'm not just some random person on the internet that you're listening to. Now, my story is all over the place, but I just want to talk about my business experience. If you want to know more about me, all my social media is wide open. I have a very unique name, so you can Google it and find out a lot about me. So I served in the Navy, and when I got out, I knew I wanted to start my own business, but I wasn't quite sure what type of business I wanted to start or when. I didn't really know what I was going to do, so when I got out, I just lined up a bunch of job interviews, and then my best friend called me up and said he wanted to start a business and that he was thinking of starting a painting company, and he asked if I was in. I said sure. We scraped together some savings and we bought a vehicle and some equipment and got to work. And this is where I really cut my teeth in business. We grew quickly and we expanded to have teams operating in 6 states. And as you can see, there's some pictures there with myself and my business partner with our arms around each other, and his little brother, which was kind of the original crew we had going on back in the day. On the right-hand side, you can see some of our crew as we expanded. This was at a job site in Iowa where that picture was taken. And at the bottom, you can see one of our jobs. We specialized in large apartment complex projects as well as new construction, which that's a picture of. So as United Painting continued to grow, I discovered I really liked this business building thing, and I had a lot of ambition and a great business partner, and both of us had wives who were great business partners as well. And so together, we decided to start 2 more businesses. We ended up buying this commercial building and remodeling it and putting in a yoga studio and then a juice bar / health cafe. We had a drive-through, Wi-Fi, you can think Starbucks and like Jamba Juice together. And so we built these businesses from the ground up, and they did really well. We built a great brand. We learned what it took to build a business from the ground up, to systematize that business. We eventually had general managers running the day-to-day operations of the business. They were highly systematized. My wife and I ended up moving an hour away from the businesses, and we only had to commute into town once to twice a week just to sort of check up on things and have meetings with managers. And that's something I'm really proud of us for. And it wasn't all me. I had great partners that I learned a lot from that helped me tackle this, but these were 2 great businesses. But again, ambition kicked in. I knew I wanted to move on to something bigger and better, and so we made the tough decision to actually sell both of those businesses, and I ended up selling the painting company to my business partner as well. And so here you can see a picture of me signing papers to sell 2 of the businesses. This was actually back in August of 2019. It was a really exciting day. It feels really good to build something, build a great business like that, a great brand, and then sell it profitably. But from there, I went into exploratory mode. I did a bunch of different things. I raised a fund and went out and acquired a bunch of houses at auction. I fixed those up. I flipped them. That did well. I started an Amazon FBA store, for those of you who are familiar with that, which did okay. I didn't really love it, so I eventually stopped that. I then launched a podcast called Successful Dropout. I'm a college dropout myself, and this podcast, what I would do is I would interview other entrepreneurs who are also college dropouts, and that actually did very well, and it's still around today. And then one of the other things I did was build a suite of courses online to help small business owners systematize their business. I've always been really passionate about systems, and again, we had these businesses, these brick and mortar businesses that were highly systematized. They gave us a lot of time and financial freedom with general managers running the businesses, and we only had to be there, a day or two per week, and sometimes even less than that. So I built this suite of courses to help other small business owners do the same. And again, if you are a business owner, or if you're an entrepreneur, or you know somebody, or if you've read, for instance, a book called The E-Myth, you understand just how important systems are to a healthy business that can make you an owner of the business, not an operator. So you have that freedom. It was around this time that I had built this suite of courses that I had somebody on my podcast who had a private equity firm called Wired Investors. And Wired Investors specialized in acquiring existing businesses and then optimizing and growing them. And as I learned about this, as I interviewed this person on my podcast, my mind was just blown and I had an aha moment. I was like, I think I've found the answer. I found what I want to do moving forward, and I knew that I could take the existing knowledge I had in building businesses and systematizing them and then apply it to businesses that already existed and kind of cheat the system and not have to start a business from the ground up again. And so I actually ended up working with Wired Investors, this private equity firm, and getting really involved and learning a ton about acquisitions. And the long story short there is that it eventually led to me becoming part of the founding team of Acquira, which is what I want to talk about next, is how does Acquira fit into the picture? What is Acquira? So first, Acquira is a fund for acquisition entrepreneurs. That means we invest our own capital into you, the acquisition entrepreneur, and we also invest into the businesses that we help you buy. This is our entire business model. This is our ultimate goal, is to invest in the businesses we help you buy. And number two, Acquira is an accelerator for acquisition entrepreneurs. This means we provide the training and systems you need to confidently acquire a great business, which in this case, a great business is a recession-resistant business, among a lot of other things. To step out of the day-to-day within a year and spend your time doing the things you love while the business works for you, and then to do that over and over again until you have a whole portfolio of recession-resistant businesses working for you. If you remember back when we talked about why there's so few buyers, it was because people lacked the capital and the skills. And that's what we provide as Acquira, is the capital and the skills to confidently acquire, optimize, and grow a great business and be a successful acquisition entrepreneur. So let's just do a recap here before we move on to the rest of the presentation. So number one, small businesses are the foundation of our economy, and the owners of those businesses are retiring at an incredible rate, and they're already willing to sell these businesses at affordable prices and on good terms, but during a recession, that is 10x'd. But still, there's no one there to buy. So number two, this leaves an incredible opportunity for acquisition entrepreneurs who have the proper training and systems to acquire, optimize, and grow an existing business. And number three, Acquira exists to invest in acquisition entrepreneurs and their acquisition targets. And we then provide the training, resources, and guidance to help you succeed in building a portfolio of healthy businesses that give you more time and financial freedom. So I want to give you guys a quick glimpse into our track record and why we're worth listening to and working with. We've done over 20 acquisitions, we've exited 5 of those, and we've deployed over $10 million. And you can find out more about these if you go over to our website. We have some case studies there, but we've been doing this for a while. There's this term you've probably heard of called an unfair advantage. And I love this quote. It kind of goes along with that term, that if you find yourself in a fair fight, you didn't plan your mission properly. And so our unfair advantage at Acquira is the fact that with 20 plus acquisitions and 5 exits of these small businesses, we've built an incredibly robust, systematic framework that identifies undervalued businesses, buys them on strong terms, and then trains people to execute on an operating plan that de-risks the business and accelerates growth. This was our startup. Learning this whole process, yes, we had success, but we also made a lot of mistakes, some of them very expensive mistakes that we had to learn from. Now our specialty is using all of our knowledge and experience, and especially our systems and training, to invest in acquisition entrepreneurs, to invest in the businesses they buy, and then to help them optimize and grow those businesses. Now, I want to take a second to preemptively answer a question that I feel like I get sometimes from acquisition entrepreneurs looking to work with us and those that are already working with us, and that is, if you guys got so good at acquiring businesses, why are you now helping others? Why are you giving away your knowledge, your systems, and your training? And I think this question comes from an honest place, because there are a lot of gurus out there that are teaching you how to do XYZ because they no longer can figure out how to do it themselves, and so the only way they can continue to make money is teaching. And for us, actually, the opposite is true. We got very good at acquiring businesses, and we realized this is a massive opportunity that we want to really take advantage of, and we want to be buying businesses for decades. But the model of just buying these businesses for ourselves, it wasn't scalable. There's only so many of us, and each of us can only manage so many businesses. And so we realized the only way to scale and keep investing in hundreds of businesses and really take advantage of this $10 trillion opportunity was to actually start investing in acquisition entrepreneurs, into majority buyers / operators who had an ownership mentality, people like yourself. And something we found out pretty quickly is that because we are investing in acquisition entrepreneurs and we're investing in their acquisition targets, that's a big commitment, and because of that, we need to really vet the people that we invest in. And so I want to really point out here, and I'll probably repeat it a couple more times, the fact that we don't just work with anybody. We cherry pick the best acquisition entrepreneurs who are a great fit for what we do, and then we invest in them, we invest in the businesses they buy, and we help them optimize and grow those businesses. So what kind of businesses are we talking about here? Now pay attention to this, because this is our investment thesis. If you work with us, these are the types of businesses that we're going to help you buy. We're looking for residential-focused home services businesses. And the reason why is because these are the majority of businesses that are owned by baby boomers who are looking to retire and pass these on. So what we're talking about here are maybe the types of businesses that you pass all the time on the street and rarely notice, but these are very healthy businesses that have healthy cash flow, in some cases over decades. These are HVAC companies, plumbing companies, electrician companies, tree trimming businesses, property management businesses, moving companies, landscaping companies, and other businesses like that. We're also looking for a combination of fair prices and strong reviews. It's really difficult if you acquire a business that has, say, thousands of customer reviews that are all 2.5 stars. It's difficult to turn that around. And so we'd rather not mess with it. We're already looking for businesses that have strong reviews. You want fair prices because that's only going to contribute to those strong reviews, and you're also going to have customers that have a history of feeling like they're being treated fairly. It also gives you room to, when you step into the business that has fair prices, and when you optimize and grow the business and improve upon your service, it gives you room to do some price testing and actually raise prices for an easy win, adding that extra money to your top line revenue there. And this is a big one. We only acquire businesses that already have a culture of being respectful and polite with customers. And this is because if the business is respectful and polite with customers and customers are routinely delighted, that is also an indication that the employees of the business have a strong culture and positive culture as well. What you don't want is to step into a business that has a negative or unhealthy culture, because that is one of the hardest things to change. Culture is so important too. If you have happy employees and happy customers, there's really nothing your business can't do. And it can be one of the main differentiating factors between your business and someone else's. And let me just tell you, with home services businesses, this is often not that difficult to find, right? Being respectful and polite to customers as an HVAC company, it's not that difficult. It's simple things like showing up on time, taking your shoes off when you go in somebody's house, cleaning up your mess after you're done with the job. Right? If you've ever had contractors in your house doing work and they don't do these things, you're not so appreciative, and they're very simple to do. We're looking to acquire businesses that have a diverse customer base, and so that means that there isn't a small concentration of customers that are responsible for the majority of the revenue, because if that's the case, then you have too many single points of failure. So you want to make sure that that customer base is well diversified. We want to make sure these businesses are over 5 years old, so we can make sure there's a strong track record and history of cash flow. We also want to make sure they have strong teams in place, and so 9+ employees plus a general manager. And we want to make sure that that manager is not the seller, right? Because they're just going to leave after you buy the business from them. We're looking for businesses that do over $500,000 per year in profit, ideally. We also will do businesses that are doing less than that, but ideally over $500,000. Once again, a great example of this would be, say, an HVAC company in Phoenix, Arizona, right? Because even in hard times, people are still going to want air conditioning in a hot place like that, and very few people are going to be able to maintain or install these units themselves. It takes a trained professional, and so there's that barrier to entry there. Last but not least, we are looking for an owner that's ready to retire and that has underinvested in the business. And this is actually very, very common. These baby boomers that are looking to retire and looking to step out of their business that's earning, $600,000 to $1 million plus per year in free cash flow, most of the time they haven't worked on growing or optimizing that business for years, in some cases for decades. And why would they? They're earning $1 million per year. Why fix what's broken? There's no incentive. But that leaves a ton of opportunity for us to come in with our acquisition entrepreneurs and invest a lot into the business and take it to the next level. So that's something we really look for. Now for the fun part. Let's take a deep dive into the process. Feel free to pause this or rewind and go back and watch certain points if you need to. So how do you go about buying these businesses? Broadly speaking, there's two ways you can acquire the business. One is with equity financing, which is investing your own money or funds from your family, friends, for an ownership stake in the business. And one is debt financing, which is money borrowed from external lenders such as a bank. The kind of financing I'm going to really be talking about in depth during this presentation is a kind of financing called an SBA loan, which a lot of you watching might already be familiar with. This is a very popular form of debt financing in the US and also happens to be one of Acquira's favorite ways to acquire a business. We're very good at it. We have it down to a science. So these are loans made by banks to you to buy a business that are backed by the US government, the Small Business Administration. And the terms are really favorable on these loans. They'll give you 80 to 90% leverage, so this would be loaning you 80 to 90% of the purchase price of the business. The interest is typically anywhere from 5 to 7%, but actually what we're seeing right now with this looming recession is that interest rate is continuing to drop. And then they'll give you these loans over 10-year amortizations. Something else we're seeing is that SBA is releasing a lot of extra funds during a recession since it's in the government's best interest to keep small businesses and therefore a very large portion of our economy healthy. I also want to briefly touch on seller financing, which I know a lot of you are aware of. This is where the seller of the business will actually act as the bank and finance part of the purchase price. You can often combine seller financing with an SBA loan to reduce your down payment on the business and also reduce the amount of the SBA debt that you have to qualify for, so that's great. And it's typical for sellers to finance between 10 and 20% of the business, but during a recession, we've seen that they're motivated to finance up to 50% or more in some cases. And actually, Acquira, we did just close on a business that we had 85% seller financing. And so we only put 15% down with our acquisition entrepreneur. Again, I wouldn't set concrete expectations here. You're not going to find that all the time, but it is possible and we did do it. So here are high-level acquisition numbers on an SBA loan. So let's say you're looking at a business that's doing $600,000 per year in EBITDA. EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxation, depreciation, and amortization. It's another way of saying the free cash flow coming out of the business after the business has paid for all the expenses that it takes to run. Or profit is another way to think about it. Now let's say the purchase price is a 2.5 multiple of that. So that comes out to a $1.5 million purchase price. Now you can get an SBA loan that's 80% of the purchase price. So that would be $1.2 million. Let's say you also get the seller to finance 10% of the purchase price. So that would be $150,000. In this case, you found financing for 90% of the purchase price of the business, which leaves you only 10% cash that you have to put down, or $150,000 to own a business that is doing $600,000 per year in free cash flow. Let that sink in. And then let's look at the post-acquisition cash flow numbers. So high-level numbers here is that, again, you bought a business that's doing $600,000 per year or $50,000 per month. If you calculate your principal and interest payments, which you can do this on any calculator, you can just Google it, you're paying around $15,000 per month towards that principal and interest. And I have the interest here at 6% over 10 years. That leaves your net cash flow at $420,000 per year or $35,000 per month. And if you do the math on that, it's a cash on cash return just for the first year of 280%. And the best part is this assumes no growth in the business. But once again, one of the things that we do is we give you the systems and training to grow the business. So, that's your return for the first year. That will go up if the business grows, and it will go higher if the business grows for the years after that. So just feel free to pause right here and let this sink in, and maybe go back to the next slide too and just take a look at that. And remember, you only put down $150,000 cash out of pocket, and now you're earning $420,000 per year after debt payments. Now you can kind of understand why we're so excited about this opportunity. So a lot of people get SBA loans, but not just anyone can get an SBA loan. So just briefly talking about this, we don't have to spend a lot on this slide, but SBA requires that you be a U.S. resident, which makes sense because it's a U.S. government-backed program. They're also going to do a character and experience assessment. And what we found is when you're buying businesses for $2 million and up, that's when they really get a lot more stringent on you having certain experience in the space. But below that, we find it's not that necessary. And so if you're buying a $1.5 million HVAC company, you don't necessarily have to have had years of experience in the HVAC industry. Just want to clarify that. They're looking for a certain credit score, and they're looking for obviously a sufficient financial profile. So they'll ask for your financial statement, your assets versus liabilities, your liquid assets, etc. Something else I'll make very clear here is that SBA is not the only way to acquire these businesses. So if you don't meet some of the qualifications for SBA, or you just don't want to do an SBA loan for some reason, there are other ways to finance these purchases. Again, oftentimes you can find pretty incredible seller financing to do the majority of the deal. So keep that in mind. And finally, we're to my favorite part where I get to talk about exactly how we work with you, the acquisition entrepreneur. So when we invest in the business that we help you buy, we broadly do three things. One is we bring in key people and resources to help you acquire, optimize, and grow the business. Two is we provide the systematic framework and the training to build the management team of the business, which helps you become an owner of the business, not an operator. And again, the goal here is for you to be able to step out of the day-to-day operations of the business in under a year. And three, we love buying and optimizing businesses. We love acquisition entrepreneurship, and we're always buying businesses with different acquisition entrepreneurs. And so our team is continually developing systems and training to help you optimize and grow your business. So you get these three things, or in other words, you get everything you need to be a successful acquisition entrepreneur. Next, I'm going to give you a high-level overview and walk you through our process in phases. So starting with phase one, this is the deal identification and closing phase. And the goal here is pretty simple. It's to have you find and buy a great business. The first thing we do is deal screening to help you find a great business. And we have a whole team and systems and technology to basically analyze thousands of businesses that are on the market and narrow it down to a few that are actually worth looking at, and eventually the business that we're going to pursue together. And once we've found that business, the next step is pre-LOI diligence. LOI stands for letter of intent, which is a non-legally binding document that you sign with the seller that shows that you're interested in purchasing their business. It also outlines basic terms such as what exactly is being purchased, how much it's being purchased for, buyer and seller responsibilities, and other things like that. Now, I could do a 3-hour-long presentation on just our diligence process. It is incredibly robust. Again, we've honed it in from the dozens of acquisitions we've done in the past. But I'll just talk you through high level of what the purpose of pre-LOI and post-LOI diligence is. In pre-LOI diligence, the goal here is essentially to answer the question, if we bought this business tomorrow and did nothing to it, absolutely nothing to try to optimize or grow the business, is there a great possibility that the business will stay consistent or grow by itself? And we want the answer to that question to always be yes. So that's the main question during pre-LOI diligence. So we determine this through hundreds of diligence criteria that we're looking at, and we're gathering materials from the seller and from the broker, and there's a whole team that's combing through this information and determining the answer to that question. If the answer to that question is yes, and we decide to move forward with the deal, then we sign an LOI with the seller, and we move forward to post-LOI diligence. And this is deep diligence. The purpose of this part of the analyzation process is to basically confirm that everything that the seller of the business is telling us is true and that there's no discrepancies. The next thing we help you with in this phase is the legal framework and contracts. So when you're getting one of these acquisitions done, there's the LOI, which is the letter of intent. There's the APA, which is the asset purchase agreement. If you're doing any sort of seller financing, there's contracts around that. There's a lot of legal work involved in closing a seven-figure business, as you might imagine. So we have all that down to a science, and it's one of the ways that we serve you. We also help you set up the correct entity structure for the acquisition, considering things like tax optimization, which is something that not a lot of people know about, but we have a lot of systems already in place for. Now we move on to phase 2, which is after we've bought the business. And the name of the game here is onboarding the business and implementing our systems for optimization and growth. So the goal here is to implement the right systems and the right team to fireproof the business and turn it into a well-oiled machine. And we're going to go into depth into what this means and also what fireproofing the business means. So one of the things we'll do is we'll provide the training and systems for you to build out the team to help you optimize and grow the business. And one of the major components of this is the general manager to run the day-to-day operations. So you heard me talking about my own businesses and how we had general managers who were running those day-to-day operations such that we, the owners, weren't having to be around there all the time. It's the exact same concept here. So we provide all the training and systems and guidance you need to carefully find and hire and train that GM into being the long-term boots-on-the-ground person to run that business so you can move on to buying more businesses. We also connect you to third-party vendors and contractors that the business pays to do the things that need to be done to optimize and grow. A couple examples of this would be people to come in and optimize the digital marketing of the business to generate more leads, or a call center to take in inbound leads for faster response time. Basically, our goal here is to provide you and your business with an all-star team to run the day-to-day operations and grow the thing so you're not doing it all yourself. Next, we have the training and systems for all the work zones that together represent the company's operations. The goal here is to make sure that you're focusing on every area of the business that needs to be focused on and nothing is being neglected. So we have training and systems to help identify and streamline existing processes, all right? What's already going on? What's going well, it needs to be optimized. Goal setting, where are we going? Strategy and decision making, how are we going to get there? Learning and training, making sure your team continues to develop and improve. Hiring and employee management, this is a big one. Where do you find the best employees and how do you hire them and effectively train them into the business? How do you manage them such that they're getting the things they need to get done, and they're being done well? And then obviously the cash, the finances, this is the lifeblood of the business. How do you manage that well? We have all the systems and training for that. The other thing we help you do is fireproof the business. Now, if you're an entrepreneur or you know another entrepreneur, I'm sure you've heard that phrase before, man, I've just been putting out fires all day. And so this is one of the things we tackle is help you fireproof the business, which means those fires aren't occurring anymore, or if they do occur, somebody else is going through a system to put out those fires and take care of that other than yourself. And so there are two types of fires. And the first type is disastrous fires. These are the types of fires that really cause damage to the future of the business. And some examples of this include key man risk, especially if it's key man risk associated with the seller, right? Because when you buy the business, the seller is going to leave. What are all the things that they were doing that now need to be done? We have systems to help you mitigate against the death or decline of a lead channel, which could really hurt the business long term. Or if there's any drastic industry changes, that's something you have to pay attention to as well. The other type of fires are jumping coals. Okay, so these are tiny coals, tiny fires that may not be disastrous, but they'll still require your immediate attention. They really suck up time. And these are things that, if left alone for too long, could definitely become disastrous fires. So some examples of this would be, say, a junior employee that quits or needs to be fired, or if there's a lawsuit from a customer or another employee, or damaging public reviews from a customer. These are the types of things that keep you being an operator of the business, not an owner of the business. So we think about mitigating this a lot. And finally, we're at phase 3 of your acquisition entrepreneurship journey, ongoing optimization and growth. The main goal here is to increase leads, increase sales, increase business. And some of the ways we do this is, for example, revamping the website and improving conversions and tracking there. I can't overstate how big of a growth opportunity this is for almost 100% of the businesses that we buy. Not to knock on baby boomers at all, but oftentimes their websites for the businesses they own look like they're straight out of the 90s or early 2000s, and they've still been running a successful business that's generating millions of dollars per year. But this is some significant low-hanging fruit for us because we can optimize their digital marketing and generate new leads online. So for example, if you own an HVAC business in Seattle, Washington, and you want to set it up to where when somebody types in Seattle HVAC into Google, you're the first result that pops up. This means they're going to click to your website, and then you've optimized your website so there's a schedule a call and get a quote button right there, and bam, that's a new lead for your business. And this is something we're very, very good at. I would go as far as to say it's one of our superpowers. Then there's referral marketing programs. You'd be surprised at how often many of these businesses don't have a system set up to where customers that really enjoyed their service have a way to refer their friends and family to the business as well. And then there's targeting existing customers. If this is a product or service that somebody needs every few months or every few years, you need to do some maintenance or something like that, like with an HVAC company, then you need to make sure there's a system in place to call those customers back and get their business again. So these are just 4 ways out of dozens that we have in our systems and training arsenal to help you improve the leads and sales of the business and grow the business ultimately. And last but not least, there's phase 4, which is the fun part. Phase 4 comes after all the work I've just talked about has been done to the business, those first 3 phases. And that happens in the first 12 months after you buy a business. So by phase 4, the business is running like a well-oiled machine. You have a competent GM in place running the day-to-day operations. And this is where you can step out of the business more and be an owner, not an operator, and spend more time doing the things you want to do or do another acquisition. You can continue to build that wealth, continue to build that private equity portfolio. Next, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about one of the actual businesses we acquired with one of our acquisition entrepreneurs. Now, I'm a little constrained on the details I can share about the business because of privacy issues, but if you work with us as an acquisition entrepreneur, you'll likely be able to understand more about this business, meet the acquisition entrepreneur we own this with, and learn more about its track record. So this was an HVAC company that was doing $900,000 per year in free cash flow. We acquired it for $2.3 million, so that's a really good multiple. It's a good purchase price right there. And this thing had an abundance of growth opportunities. The owners had severely underinvested in it because, they're earning almost $1 million per year for years in a row. So why fix what's broken? There's no incentive there again, right? But even though the business was generating millions of dollars in revenue per year, it was doing so without really any systems in place. And so when we came in and bought the place, we found just 0 systems anywhere. I mean, there were 50,000 customer records stacked in boxes in a corner, and they weren't being utilized at all. And so one of the first things we did was digitize those and put them into a database so we could categorize and comb through them and put in place things like retargeting customers and referral programs. And speaking of retargeting those customers, if you understand the HVAC business, some of those units have to be maintained every 3 to 5 years and ultimately replaced after a decade plus. Well, this business had been around for over 30 years and hadn't retargeted any of its existing customers. So there was an easy win there. This business was also a great example of having really, really high customer reviews. There were thousands of reviews across Google and Angie's List and Yelp. All, the total aggregate reviews was 4.8 to 4.9 stars. But it also had some of the fairest and lowest prices compared to all its competitors. So a super easy win was for us to just come in and do some price testing, and since it had some of the lowest prices but some of the best reviews, we were just able to raise our prices to right at or below the competition, and you have that immediate bump in top-line revenue. We also rebuilt the website and reapproached the digital marketing, and so now they're getting a bunch of new leads online to the point where we had to hire a call center for faster lead response time. And as of recording this presentation, last I checked, as a result of those new leads, their unit sales were up by 50%. Our acquisition entrepreneur also hired a general manager that was a key executive at our largest competitor that does 10x our revenue. And so this is a really highly competent individual, experienced manager who's been there, done that, has a vision for the company. And long term, after a year post-acquisition, our acquisition entrepreneur is going to be able to step out of the day-to-day operations and let the GM run all of those, so he can go on and do more acquisitions. The incredible part of this is this situation, this acquisition is not an anomaly. We are literally coming across 10 to 15 businesses per week that are just like this. Again, it's like we talked about at the very beginning of the presentation. There's a very high supply of these businesses because all these baby boomers are retiring, and there's a very low demand, which leaves a huge opportunity for somebody like yourself as an acquisition entrepreneur partnered with the right company like us, who have all the training and systems to be able to take advantage of this $10 trillion opportunity. Now, after listening to all this, you might be tempted to go out and just do this all yourself, just figure it out, and that would be great. More power to you. We probably have some free resources we can share. But again, this took us years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to get right. And so what I'd like to do is list out what this would cost if you were to do it on your own, and we know this because we've been through all of it, and then compare that to the cost of working with us. So we talked about the deal sourcing and initial screening process, or phase 1. So at the beginning of that, you could probably do it yourself and go on these different broker websites and find some businesses to look at. There, your biggest cost is going to be a big learning curve, and it's going to take up a lot of your time. Then there's the pre and post LOI diligence. If you went to a diligence firm that specializes in this stuff, you're probably paying around $10,000 for that per business that you look at. Then there's the quality of earnings analysis, which is an essential part of any diligence process. Essentially what you're doing here is it's a massive process of going back for the last 1, 2, or 3 years, however many years the business is being evaluated on, and you're matching all the invoices that the business generated in that period of time to deposits that were actually made in their bank account, and you're comparing that to the profit and loss statement that the seller is giving you to do diligence on. And what you're doing is just making sure there's no discrepancies there, that what the seller says the business is earning is actually what the business is earning. Going through that process is very extensive, and it would cost you $20,000 at an accounting or another financial firm. Then there's analyzing the growth opportunities of the business and coming up with a plan to execute on those post-acquisition. So if we're just talking about the digital marketing opportunities that I covered, you're probably paying around $5,000 to a marketing agency to analyze the business, analyze its website and its online leads, and come up with a plan for that. Then there's the legal side, all the necessary documents to get a deal done. That's the letter of intent, the asset purchase agreement, the seller's note if there's any kind of seller financing, the entity to set up the process. This would easily cost you $15,000 or probably more from a legal firm to help you out with that. There's also the tax guidance when you're acquiring one of these assets and exchanging that kind of value. You want to really make sure you're optimized for taxes. We have all the systems for that. We've done it a bunch ourselves, but this would easily cost you $10,000 to go to a firm and get figured out. And then we talked about hiring a really competent and experienced general manager to run the day-to-day operations of the business. And these are highly competent people. It's not an easy process to just find and hire them. And so you're easily paying at least $15,000 to a recruiting agency that's going to charge you a decent percentage of their first year's salary to find that general manager. And then let's look at phase 2, which would be the first 6 months after you buy the business. Obviously, you want to make sure and streamline operations, and you want to implement all the necessary systems to de-risk and grow the business, so you can be an owner, not an operator. If you don't know how to do this yourself, you are easily paying $90,000 to a junior and senior management consultant to put these things in place. Finally, let's look at phase 3, which is months 6 through 12 post-acquisition. If you remember from before, this is where we focus on our growth initiatives for the business, mainly focused on digital marketing. This is where we're executing the growth plan. And here you're easily paying $12,000 per month to a digital marketing firm to put that plan into action. You're also doing a website redesign, which can easily be $15,000 one-time cost. So if you add all this up, right, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 1 is going to cost you $75,000. Phase 2 is going to cost you at least $90,000. Phase 3 is going to cost you at least $87,000. And this also isn't accounting for just the general learning curve and all the time that you're going to spend getting this all figured out for yourself. So the total cost there, $252,000. So what is the cost of doing all of this with Acquira? We wanted to make sure that working with us was a fraction of the cost of doing this yourself. And also, all those costs I laid out that you'd pay other people, that was for the first 12 months after you bought the business. But we're investing in the business alongside you, which means we're in it for the long haul. We're in it past 12 months, and so you continue getting all that value. So here's actually what we charge. For phase 1, deal identification and closing, we charge $5,000 per month for a maximum of 6 months. So $30,000 maximum to get you to the point of actually closing on the business. After that, you don't have to pay us any more money. We actually write you a check for 30% of the equity in your business. And when we do this, that's when we're on for phase 2 and phase 3, and we give you all the systems and training and guidance and all the vendors and contractors and help you set up the team to make those things successful. And once again, this is our business model. If I go back to this slide, that $30,000 we charge, we've never made any profit from that. Usually we actually lose money there. It just goes to cover our costs because our team is doing a lot of work for you to source and due diligence and get all the legal stuff in order, deal with the financing, and actually get the business closed. Where we make our money and our entire business model revolves around purchasing equity in your business. And so we purchase that 30%, and then that ensures that our incentives are aligned to keep the business healthy, optimized, and growing, and sell it for a really great profit later on down the road. And yes, I don't know if I did a great job pointing that out before, but that's one of the biggest benefits to actually having us invested in the business with you. Our incentives are aligned. We're not just going to give you a service, you pay for it, and then we're like, see ya, you're on your own. We are incentivized to make sure you continue being successful running this business. So yeah, that's it. And if this presentation has piqued your interest at all and you'd like to learn more about being an acquisition entrepreneur, your next step is to join our Acceleration Gauntlet. The gauntlet is what everybody goes through before we buy a business with them. The purpose of it is to help both you and us determine if we're a great fit to work together and basically acquire and grow a business together. This is where we vet each other, and we only buy businesses with people who have passed this training. When you get through the gauntlet and we decide that we want to move forward on an acquisition, that's when we formalize our agreement and we'll start sourcing a business to buy. And now here's what the gauntlet entails. It is 10 days of online training. It takes about an hour per day, and it's on your own time. And this training is split up into about 1/3 of it is personal development and 2/3 is acquisitions and diligence training. There's also included is a weekly call with a member of our leadership team and an in-person meeting if at all possible. Every person we've bought a business with, we've met in person at some time or another. Again, it's a relationship to take very seriously. I mean, you're buying a business together, and we view these relationships we want them to last for years. We want to help you build a portfolio. So it's very important that we really get to know each other, and there's just no substitute for meeting up in person. And the great thing about the gauntlet is that it's a zero net cost to you. We do charge a $997 fee just to make sure that people are serious about the training, because we have administrative work to do on our end, and we're having these calls with you, we're doing the in-person meetup, so we just want to make sure people are serious. But once you complete your training, we refund that money back whether or not you decide to move forward with us. And we're like the easiest people to get your money back from. So you're just paying up front. Think of it as like being held in escrow. As soon as you finish, we just send the money back to you. We actually recently used to charge $5,000 for this, so now is a really great opportunity since we've lowered that refundable fee. And once again, going through the Acceleration Gauntlet is not a commitment to buy a business with us. It's just so we can get to know each other, and it's a zero net cost to you. So there's zero risk on your part, and the worst case scenario is that you walk away knowing a lot more about what it takes to analyze and acquire a business. Once you apply to the gauntlet, you'll also get a massive introduction package that outlines the entire process of working with us in great detail, and it also has supporting materials for everything else I've talked about today. There will also eventually be an opportunity to jump on a call with us and ask any questions you might have, and we can also get to know each other a little bit more. It's kind of the step that would come before meeting in person. To apply to the gauntlet, please go to acquira.com/gauntlet. You can also click the link next to this video, and that will take you straight through to the application. Again, the training is zero net cost to you. There's no risk. The worst case scenario is you'll just learn a lot about what it takes to diligence and acquire these types of assets, and we just love to get to know you more. Thank you for watching this presentation, and hopefully I'll see your application come in soon.